I do a lot of very funny acts, and I joke that I will give people confusion boners.
Think about when you're walking through an art museum. You see some paintings where you're like, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. You see some paintings where you're like, I don't even really understand what's going on here, but obviously somebody thinks it's cool.
In burlesque, you see a lot more experimentation with the show in terms of the performers aren't just trying to be sexy the way our society has defined sexy as.
There are all sorts of stereotypes that exist about Black and brown bodies. And so being able to see a Black or brown performer on stage presenting themselves and showing their body in the way that they are comfortable with, it allows lots of racist history to be dismantled. And then when we're talking about burlesque, for the audience that I'm used to having at the shows that I host, it's very woman-centered, very queer-affirming.
Hi, I'm Allison, CEO of Bothered Stories, and this is Smut Talks. Join me for candid conversations with leading voices about smut, desire, the patriarchy, and the cultural forces shaping the stories we love. Let's get bothered.
Hi, and welcome to Smut Talks. I am so excited today to bring you all an episode all about burlesque. I have personally been a longtime enjoyer of burlesque, for lack of a better term, and I also love the way burlesque has overlapping elements with erotica, and we're going to get into all of that today. I've got two great guests to introduce you to. They're both burlesque dancers, they both host burlesque shows, and they also write, so they are the perfect guests to have on our show. Let me introduce them. Diva Darling, aka Rebecca Rose Vassy, thank you for joining us. Diva is a burlesque performer and teacher of burlesque. You can take her classes. She's a sex educator and host and producer of the sex-themed storytelling shows Smut Slams in DC, Baltimore, and Philadelphia. And I definitely want to get into that a little bit with you, Diva, because I've never been to a Smut Slam before, even though I run a smut company. So I want to hear a little more about that. And she's also a writer herself. She writes beautiful erotic stories. She's been published in the Best Women's Erotica Anthology. And she now has a story up on Bothered Stories. It just went live this month of May. We're so excited. And we'll chat about that for a hot second as well. But let me introduce my second guest. We have Mx Eden. That's MX Eden. Welcome to the show, Eden. Eden is a burlesque performer, host, and MC of burlesque shows. She's also a sex educator and a writer from the Baltimore, Maryland area. She's a consent advocate, and she specializes in creating safe spaces for people to explore pleasure. She's the resident host of the Pies and Pasties burlesque show at the Pie Shop in DC, as well as the host of the Saturday night show at the Charm City Burlesque and Variety Festival. Welcome, Eden, and welcome, Diva Darling. I'm so thrilled to have you all.
Thank you.
Yes, I am super excited to talk to you.
I can't wait. All right, so let's just start first with all things burlesque. And I wanna keep it really easy from the get-go. I want to hear from you all. What is burlesque? I think most of our listeners will have heard of burlesque. Many of them, like me, will have attended burlesque performances, but I think we'll have a handful of people that have never seen burlesque in their life, right? So let's just level set. Tell me how you would describe burlesque. How do you answer the question, what is burlesque? And for someone who's never attended a burlesque performance, what should they expect? And let's say, Eden, why don't we start with you? And then Diva, I'll have you jump in from there.
Sure. The way I usually answer the question usually depends on like the setting and the point of reference of the person who's asking. But in general, burlesque is what happens when you let theater kids into a strip club. I think it is this really beautiful combination of storytelling and costuming and using the body as self-expression that no other art form that I'm familiar with really encompasses. So that is my answer.
I love it. Diva, what would you add to that, or how would you answer the question?
I think my favorite funny definition that I've ever heard of burlesque is it's steampunk stripping for nerds. And it's really kind of true. But in general, if I'm describing it to someone who's really not super familiar, I would call it it's a performance art form that is very performer driven. It does, and it harkens back to the burlesque traditions that originated in the late 1800s and continued up until probably around World War II. Which, everything was like much more, like, oh, like we have to do like a little tease and, like we can't be fully nude and like whatever. And it's an art form that kind of died out mid-century and then was revived in roughly like the 80s into the early 90s, largely by exotic dancers, and has become kind of its own little underground movement that has a lot of similarities to things like drag performance.
Okay, so hold on. That was very interesting for me. I'm unpacking it. So you're saying that burlesque has its roots in over 100 years ago. There were burlesque type shows, but it only recently, it sounds like in the past 30 to 40 years, 80s, 90s, kind of got revived again and brought back to the stage in a more perhaps modern form of it. Okay. You mentioned expression, you mentioned art, you mentioned drag shows. So tell me a little bit more about that, about what the experience is of watching burlesque. And what comes to mind to me to ask you about that is it stripping? Like, I could go to a strip club and I can maybe watch someone strip and dance. I know that it's wildly different. Lay it down for me. Like, what makes it different?
Sure. The simple answer to is burlesque stripping is yes, kind of. We are generally taking off clothes. So like by the strict literal definition, yes. The world of strip clubs is distinct from the world of burlesque, but there is a lot of overlap. I have a lot of burlesque colleagues who have worked in clubs. A lot of burlesque performers, I won't say most, but a lot, have a lot of respect for people who work in strip clubs. And that includes me. I've known a lot of people who do that kind of work exclusively, people who bridge both worlds. So it's not a perfect separation. The biggest difference tends to be, I think that burlesque is more of like kind of a theatrical experience. I don't want to speak for people who work in strip clubs, but it's very centered around like catering to the client there and like what do they want, what do they expect, whatever. And here it's kind of like we have what we're going to present and we hope that you like it.
Burlesque is a very theatrical, very storytelling driven, very elaborate costume forward type of stripping. I think that a better way to frame the question is like, what's the difference between a strip club and a burlesque show? Because the feeling of the space is different. In general, a strip club is a very male-centered environment that's like dimly lit and the floors might be sticky and they might have really good wings. Some strip clubs have really good wings. But in general, a burlesque show happens at either a restaurant or a theater. And so it's well lit when you come into the space, you sit in your seat, you might be greeted by venue staff or by stage kittens or other folks associated with the production. It's generally a more woman forward and queer forward space. So just like the energy of the people in the room feels different. And so I think that when it comes to like the feeling of the space, it's very different. For, like a burlesque show was very different from a strip club. But when we're talking about the content and the bodies and the fact that people are taking clothes off and hopefully making money to do so, it is one and the same. It is hand in hand. It is stripping's cousin.
I love this. So what I'm hearing is the mechanics might be the same in that clothes come off in some sort of sequential order, perhaps a choreographed order. But the setting surrounding it, the premise of it, and the theatricality of it is different, could be different. And those comprise the differences between the two rather than the actual mechanics of what's happening. I would say like some things that come to mind for me when I think of burlesque from the point of view of an audience member watching it, or having been to both strip clubs and burlesque performances, some things that strike me that I've noticed is that burlesque dancers tend to do a performance to a specific song, right? That is a specific choreographed, has a specific amount of choreographed steps to it. And what they wear is often very different and very catered to whatever act it is, the theme of that act, whether it's giant wings, or I remember seeing a burlesque dancer that came on stage dressed like a banana and her whole act was unpeeling the banana. I've seen dragons before. So this word that you all use, theatricality, comes to mind for me.
And that's a really good point about one of the things that you will see frequently in burlesque that you probably will not see in a strip club is, for lack of a better term, ugly acts. Like I do a lot of very funny acts, and I joke that I like will give people confusion boners because I'm wearing weird outfits, or like I'm dressed in a way that, like I might have like a hoodie on, or like hospital scrubs, or like something that's not sexy. And like a strip club tends to be very focused on like the sexy aesthetic and like the sexuality of it. And that does happen in burlesque, but it is, it's something that we can break out of. We can do stuff that's weird or silly, or, just kind of like, what did I even watch? Like stuff like that. And there's also an important distinction. I'm glad that Eden brought up the difference in the venues, because I do think that makes a huge difference. The legalities of the venues are also frequently very different. So strip clubs, there's often, not always, an expectation of complete nudity. And so things are zoned and licensed and everything according to that. Most of the places that burlesque takes place, particularly because they're serving alcohol and they have different kinds of, they're not licensed as a strip club. We have to, like, that's why we have pasties. That's why we, are still wearing underwear, things like that. Like, it's much more rare for a burlesque act to go full nude. And that has a lot to do with the kind of spaces that we are using.
Got it. Got it. And I like what you said, Diva, about in burlesque, you see a lot more experimentation with the show in terms of the performers aren't just trying to be sexy the way our society has defined sexy as. They go outside that. And Eden and I actually talked about this last week in a conversation. I mentioned that at a burlesque show I had been to once, a performer pulled a tampon out of her vagina and swung it around like kind of cowgirl style as part of her show. And I'll just never forget that moment because it was so bizarre and so wonky and so cool. Like, damn, girl, you get it. Like, I don't know. And I'm sure some people thought that was really hot. And I'm sure some people thought that was gross. And that's okay, right? Like, that was part of it. Eliciting that range of response, I think, was part of it. And I think that's a really beautiful thing that burlesque offers, is this kind of like range of performance in terms of styles and what you can do. Eden, I remember you last week specifically mentioning that one thing you like about burlesque is that it's performing outside of the male gaze. And I think that dovetails into what Diva and I were just talking about. And I would love to get your thoughts on that and for you to kind of take us into your mind there a little bit as well.
Absolutely. I think that in general, a burlesque show is going to have something for everyone, not just aesthetically, not just talking about like what body types you're attracted to, but think about when you're walking through an art museum. You see some paintings where you're like, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. You see some paintings where you're like, I don't even really understand what's going on here, but obviously somebody thinks it's cool. You see some sculptures where you're like, you can't even tell what you were trying to do here, but I respect the fact that you did it. Like, there's so many different ways of experiencing burlesque based on what's presented, and also based on like what you are bringing to the show, based on, you know, how your day went and what type of energy that you are bringing to the crowd. How much you're tipping is obviously going to inform your experience. Where you're sitting in the room can affect your experience. And so there's really just so many different ways of engaging with burlesque as a performance art. And then when we're talking about burlesque for the audience that I'm used to having at the shows that I host, it's very woman-centered, very queer-affirming. And so we're not seeing what you would see in like a music video or on a runway or something that is like specifically for and marketed to men, essentially. Yeah. And so you're really seeing creativity. You're really seeing a story. You're really seeing like something that somebody went through that they decided to emote and express through this choice of song and costume and choreography. And so I think that to your point, when we're thinking about what society tells us is sexy, we're just there for the boobs and the butts. But if you're actually thinking about art as like a fully fleshed out, well-rounded thing that this artist created, that you don't have the same life experience that this artist had. You don't have the same point of reference that this artist had when they put this act together, but you still get something out of it. And that something might be, wow, boobs and butt, but that something might also be a commentary on the economy. That something could also be a different way of seeing yourself and your own body, because the body that is on stage is one that you were told isn't supposed to be sexy, but you're seeing it as sexy. So that gives you permission to see yourself as sexy. You might feel something differently about, I don't know, something you've never even thought of before. There's a burlesque act that I saw like 10 years ago at this point that still sticks with me. The performer's name is Bunny Vicious, and the song was Take Me With You by Prince. And she performed this act as a puppy waiting to be adopted. And the puppy is saying, I don't care where we go. I don't care what we do. I don't care, baby. Just take me with you. And I cried. I cried at this silly portrayal of pet adoption because it was so creative and so beautiful. And Bunny Vicious is so gorgeous and interesting to look at. So there's so many ways that you can experience what is being put in front of you, separate from the fact that it may very well include a very nice butt and some very nice boobs.
I think I want to talk about for a minute burlesque and erotica. And one of the things that I love that burlesque does is it builds up anticipation. It builds up suspense, titillation. You don't just take it all off right away. That wouldn't be a great performance. There's drama. There's teasing. You perform it. I'm just an audience member. You guys know you're designing your choreography to do this. And it's so cool. And it's so impactful. You've got us like right on your seats. Like, I've been at a burlesque show before where I'm like, oh, is she going to show us her, am I going to get to see her breast yet? And I'm like, wait, no, not yet. They put the wing in front of it or whatever it is. So you guys, like, you're experts at building this kind of anticipation. And I think that's hard to do. I don't think it's easy. There's a skill to it, right? And I'm sure you guys have practiced and learned it. But I'm curious to know, like, what goes into that tease? How do you build anticipation as performers and people that teach burlesque? Let's start there. And then, Diva, I'm sure you know where I'm going with this, but like great erotica does the exact same thing. You cannot start an erotic short story and lead with scene 1, sex scene. It's not that hot. But if you put it like 3/4 of the way through a story or towards the end of the story after there's been a lot of buildup and suspense, it hits so much harder. It's just take that scene and put it later and it's better. It turns us on more. We like it. We're more excited to read it. It evokes more emotion. So I think there's a lot of parallels there between erotica and burlesque. And just curious to get your all's thoughts on building that anticipation and how that plays into burlesque. Diva, I'll turn that one over to you, since you have a short story with us on our site too that also did this very, very well.
Thank you. So I think the thing that erotica and burlesque have in common is, in the case of erotica, like the sex scene, like why is this like a natural outcome of the story? Why does this matter to the story? Why are these characters having sex? Why do we care? And in burlesque, like the question I start any act with when I start with a concept is, why is this character taking off her clothes? Because it is very rarely just me as Diva Darling on stage. Like, even if there's not like a defined character, like, I'm, playing this character from a popular franchise, whatever, even if it looks like it's just me, it's like, okay, but like, why is this version of Diva Darling like taking off my clothes? And maybe it's just to seduce the audience. That's totally valid. But because I tend to do a lot of like, I do a lot of the weird stuff, basically. So a lot of the time when I'm taking things off, the striptease is part of telling the story. And that's my favorite burlesque to watch too. Like, what's the transformation that's happening as these layers are coming off? Like we're talking about like acts that have like a political or whatever kind of edge to it. Back when, I can't remember which politician was the one who was talking about immigrants as like poison Skittles. Remember that? Like it was like 10 years ago.
I don't remember it, but it sounds awful, but go on.
Yeah. So he's basically like comparing immigrants to like a bowl full of Skittles, and like some of them are poisoned, and it was terrible. And I was in a very politically themed show. So I created an act where I was the Statue of Liberty. And basically the concept is like, hey, the Statue of Liberty is an immigrant. So as I'm taking off my clothes, I have like traditional like 1930s, like, immigrant off the boat looking clothes underneath. And it, becomes this whole political statement, and I throw Skittles at the audience and like whatever. So it's that element of like surprise of like, I'm not just the Statue of Liberty being sexy, like I'm making a political statement, and I'm showing like, hey, remember, like, this is where this statue came from. Like, this did not originate in America. So I think like that's an important part of the kind of the striptease that we do, is like, what is the story we're telling? Like, how does this play into it?
What is the story we're telling?
I love what you said, Diva. Like, that makes so much sense, that it starts with the why. It starts with getting everybody bought into the, why is this happening? Why is this person on the stage? Why are they trying to communicate something with me? Because it is a form of communication between the performer and the audience. And then, of course, the additional layer of like, why is this character getting naked? What does that have to do with the story that's being told? So I have an act to the song called Unknown by Duran Bernard. If you're not familiar with his music, he is one of my favorite artists currently. And the song is him like expressing his frustration of being in love with someone who just like wants to see what's out there and wants to explore the unknown when he is the sure thing. And so as I am performing this song and disrobing, I am showing you the certainty of who I am. Like, there is nothing unknown about me. You're seeing literally all of me. So you have the choice, along with the lyrics of this song, like it's expressing that you have the choice of exploring the unknown or focusing on what you see right here in front of you. And I think that it really is the combination of song choice and costuming and movement combined with like the act of undressing that has this powerful like storytelling potential that I think happens in erotica too, where you're bought into like, well, how is this person feeling? What is it that they want to feel? Why do they feel connected to this other person or this object or this thing that they are experiencing in this particular way? And then like, am I in agreement with what is happening at the end of it? Am I going along with this storyline? Do I feel like, even though the unknown is expansive and there's all sorts of other people and bodies out there, do I want to focus on this one here? Or do I want to take this puppy home? Or do I want to reevaluate my views on immigrants? Like, there's so many things that can happen with this combination of things that is like so unique to burlesque and erotica that we're exploring this overlap.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think another thing that comes to mind for me between the similarities or overlap between burlesque and erotica is creating art outside the male gaze. A lot of erotica and smut is written for women and by women, which is just different than other types of quote unquote porn, right? So that to me is like another interesting similarity. Another thing that I really love that erotica does is because it's written and we're not seeing the visuals, it allows you as the reader to envision all sorts of different body types, ethnicities, people's shapes. Like, it's just not mapped there. You don't often know about the characters. In fact, when I get a story submission where, and this has only happened a couple of times, but I had a story submission where someone described a woman's body using specific measurements, like numbers. They tried to give like 36. I don't even know what the numbers were, and I just said, no, I don't publish stories where we're, where we're idolizing a specific body type as like the hot type. And in writing, you can say someone that's beautiful and curvy, but keep it kind of broad so that we can love and adore all body types. And I think one thing I've always appreciated about burlesque is the diversity that you see on stage, across all types of ways of diversity, but including, body sizes and body images. And that's just my observation as an audience member. I'm curious to get your all's thoughts. Like, is that something that you feel is important to burlesque or a part of burlesque? Is that just kind of the shows I've seen do that? Like, how do you all see this as a component of burlesque or not?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about burlesque. Like, if all you consume is mainstream media and mainstream porn, then the bodies that you see look very similar. And so you kind of think that all bodies look that way, right? But when you explore burlesque, which even though it is being mainstream, it is still very much a niche art. And so there's a lot of room for a lot of different types of bodies, a lot of different ways of expressing yourself. And so when you go to a burlesque show and you see a body shape in clothes that you've never seen undressed before, you get to unveil this mystery of like, well, what does this body shape look like under this gown or under this banana costume or however it starts? Same thing where like there are all sorts of stereotypes that exist about Black and brown bodies. And so being able to see a Black or brown performer on stage presenting themselves and showing their body in the way they are comfortable with, it allows lots of racist history to be dismantled because we've been told all sorts of gross things about how particular bodies are. And so I think that like burlesque gives you this really unique opportunity to engage with the possibilities of bodies. Like you don't have to only see naked people in porn, and you don't have to only see naked people that you are about to have sex with. There's all sorts of ways to engage with people in a variety of states of undress. I love being in nude spaces. I'm a little bit of a nudist myself. And so going to nude beaches or going to a spa or bathhouse, those are other ways that you get to see a ton of different types of bodies. But in the context of performance, burlesque is a really unique way of like there being a little bit of experiential distance, I like to say, where like you don't really have any responsibility to this body on stage other than to make room for it to do whatever it's going to do. So you just get to see it and witness it, and whatever preconceived notions you already had about fat people or Black people or disabled people or people from wherever in the world you've never been, you get the opportunity to silently readjust whatever it was you came in with, because you've now had this new experience of witnessing this performer in all of their glory.
Yeah, 100% agree with all of that. I think um, body diversity, body affirmation, which I will say instead of body positivity, because as much as I am all about the body positivity, um, it is more important, I think, for us to um, make peace with our bodies and and just be able to coexist and be in the forms that we are, and it's not dependent on like, oh, I have to be like rah rah, like yay, I love my body. Like maybe you just are kind of with your body today, and that's fine. But yeah, the representation matters so much, and it's a huge part of burlesque. And I think about what we were talking about earlier with how queer the spaces are too. Like these are very erotica and burlesque are very women driven, but they are also very queer spaces.
Yeah.
And by that, I don't just mean like, oh, everybody's gay. Like, yeah, there's a lot of queer folks and trans folks within both those spaces. But it doesn't it's also kind of queer in the verb sense, like queering a space, queering reality, queering expectations, basically subverting and changing and taking control of those things. And a lot of that, like with erotica, I think it's an opportunity of some, anybody who has the urge to write, can sit down and like write a story that's like, this is my experience, this is what it feels like to to be the sexuality that I am, or to have the kind of sex that I have, or to live in the kind of body that I live in. And with burlesque, it's it's pretty similar. It's a you get to be in a space where you are centered and celebrated, whatever it is that you look like on stage. I'm a fat performer. I'm over 50. And I get up on stage and I'm like, I'm going to make you scream for me. I'm going to make you throw dollars at me. And like, that's not an experience that we expect to have in, mainstream society. So it's incredibly powerful. And it's especially powerful for the people in the audience or in the reading audience who have never, ever seen that kind of thing reflected back to them. They've never seen a body that looks like theirs treated like something amazing. They've never heard their kind of sex described before. And they're like, oh my God, this is beautiful. And it relates very closely to real life. In the storytelling show that I run, Smut Slam, people are telling real life stories about their sex lives. And I remember one time watching, kind of from behind the stage area, there was a trans person on stage telling a story about the first time they had sex after they transitioned and how glorious it was. And it was a sold out house and they were cheering for this person. And I was like, God, everybody should have that moment to be celebrated like that, and be supported for who they are. And I think these are some of the things that we get out of these art forms.
Hey there, quick break to tell you about something I'm really proud of. Bothered Stories is a home for short, spicy fiction from best-selling authors. Every story is bingeable, 20 to 35 minutes long, no cringe, no filler, just beautifully written, smutty stories for your lunch break, your commute, or the end of a long day. Members get a new story every week, access to the full searchable library, and a newsletter from me, the CEO, every first and third Sunday. And every author on our platform is paid. Your membership invests in writers doing meaningful work and helps destigmatize sex and pleasure. New members get a 2-week free trial, and an annual membership works out to just $5 a month. Head to botheredstories.com, use code SMUTTALKS, SMUTTALKS, for 25% off your annual membership. That's botheredstories.com, code SMUTTALKS. Okay, back to the show.
Thank you for all of that, Diva. I was feeling emotional just hearing you talk about the acceptance, and not just the acceptance, but the celebration of people and bodies that wouldn't normally experience in the kind of patriarchal society that we live in today, and the values that come along with that. Yeah, thanks. So There's a couple of things I wanted to get into. I'm also realizing I forgot to ask you all a very basic question of your own journey in burlesque and how you got into it, which is how I wanted to start this episode. But we just like got right into the meat of really important topics. So I'm glad we went there. But I do want to hear from both of you. And I want to hear, how did you get into burlesque? Like, what has your journey been? What led you here? What drew you to it? And what has being a burlesque performer as well as a host, because you both do both, what has that journey been like for you? So I don't know, Eden, do you want to kick us off? And we'll start with you.
Sure. Burlesque has been my hyperfixation since I was 6 years old. It started with the movie Gypsy, the version where Natalie Wood plays Gypsy Rose Lee. And that opened my mind up to a whole world of possibility. I grew up around performers. My mother is a singer. And so the idea of having a part of your life take place on stage and in public view was not foreign to me. But the idea of taking your clothes off in front of people was. And especially because I also came from like a very Christian, very chaste environment where like we could run around the house in t-shirts and underwear, but as soon as company was coming over, you had to be fully dressed. And so I had a very particular relationship with my body and bodies in general until I saw Gypsy, and I was like, wait a minute. So people can be undressed around each other and like still be comfortable and still have conversations and still be taken seriously and still be seen as an artist. At the end of the movie, not to spoil it, even though this story has existed for decades. So if somebody is unfamiliar with it at this point, go watch one version of the film, or find the footage of Audra McDonald on Broadway playing Rose. Life-changing experience. But bath time was also a big deal in my house growing up. And in the end of the movie, Gypsy Rose Lee says she's going to have a photographer meet her in her boudoir to take some photos in the bathtub. And I'm like, wait a minute, photo shoot in the bathtub? That sounds amazing. And so I'm so thankful that like from a very young age, I was able to kind of have my brain broken in terms of like what is appropriate and how we can be in community with people whose bodies we have access to and respect enough to not violate their consent. Like, I think that so much of how I see the world and how I relate to people is shaped by just like early exposure to burlesque, and then thankfully being able to see it in a bunch of different settings and a bunch of different forms. I went to my first burlesque show in New York in maybe 2011. I don't even know what is time at this point. But I went to the Slipper Room in New York, and I saw a performer come out dressed as an unlicensed Winnie the Pooh. Like, I'm pretty sure they can't officially say they were Winnie the Pooh, but just imagine like the bear with the tiny t-shirt. And then by the end of the act, she was rolling around the floor to Candy Shop by 50 Cent in stickiness and honey. And so I was like, wow, my brain has been further broken to the possibilities of what can happen on stage. And so just as a lover of performance, as a lover of music, as a lover of bodies and creating spaces, being in spaces to celebrate all of these things in the same space at the same time, burlesque has just been like with me my entire life. I am thankful for like this period in my life where I was a well-known-ish spoken word artist in the Baltimore and DC area. And so at some point, somebody said, hey, you're really good on the microphone. Would you like to host things? And I said, sure, because I'm a Scorpio and I'm queer, which means I can do anything. And so I decided to step into the space of hosting open mics and performance art variety shows, which led me into hosting burlesque and adult nightlife events. And so I just am so thankful that like I am a yes-oriented person. I'm so thankful that people ask me to do stuff. And I'm like, sure, why not? This thing's related to something I'm already into. And in general, if somebody asks me to do something that's related to something I'm already into, I'm going to say yes. So that is how this movie that opened my eyes to a full art form that broke my brain about the fullness of what it could be led to me having the privilege of hosting and producing spaces for people to do the exact same thing. So I am in love with burlesque. I have been for a very long time. I don't see it not being a part of my life. I really love the fact that I'm connected to so many performers of just diverse lived experience and also like diverse station in life. I know some folks who are like fresh out of college and just really excited about the freedom of being an adult, and they want to like show their bodies because they can for the first time. And then I know folks who are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who are like, this is the body I got, and this has been with me this entire time. So it's still going to be a part of how I express myself. And I just love that burlesque gets to be a lifetime passion, a lifetime commitment, and really like a lifetime way of being. It's impossible to pretend that like you do this stuff on stage and it doesn't leak out into how you interact with the rest of the world and how you see gender and how you see economics and how you see consent and how you see relationships. Like it's just such a beautiful lens to look at the world through. So I am so thankful that burlesque has been a part of my life for damn near the whole thing.
Thank you for sharing that, Eden. Okay, so burlesque as a lens to look at the world through. I'll definitely be taking that one home with me. I will also share that I have not seen that movie, so it sounds like I've got my weekend movie chosen. And the other thing that I'm just still turning over in my head is Winnie the Pooh, but burlesque version. Diva is nodding if you're listening and you're not watching the video. So I think like that just, you kind of blew my mind there, just even hearing about it. And now I'm imagining like a burlesque dancer rolling around in honey, that just the whole thing. I also have 3 little kids and we watch Winnie the Pooh a lot. So there's a lot going on right now as I envision this, but I love it.
There's this really beautiful thing that happens in burlesque where you get to see people's niche childhood references in adult form. There are so many like cartoon references and just like nerdy little things or just nostalgic things that you haven't thought about in 10 or 20 years. And then somebody decides to do it with sparkly pasties on. And you're just like, I've never looked at the Berenstain Bears in that way, but here we are.
Wait, but Winnie the Pooh is actually very sensual. Like, first of all, he, she, they walk around with a crop top on all the time. So they're already half nude. They're dipping their fingers in honey, which is dripping off their fingers, and they're eating it. Like, come on. They're just, they want to be a burlesque performer, basically.
And Winnie the Pooh is thick. It's giving body positivity. Like, there's so much to take from this little reference and just expand it into like the fullness of what it can be, you know, in your adult brain. Like, yes, you experience it as a kid and then you look at it as a teen or later in life. And next thing you know, you've like perverted this adorable little character into whatever you want it to be, complete with sticky honey residue all over the stage.
I'm going to have a really hard time watching the Winnie the Pooh movie with my children in the coming months, but we'll do my best. I think I'm going to text you, Eden, and be like, I'm trying to watch Winnie the Pooh. It's just not the same.
Oh, please. I can't look at Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer the same after I saw BB Bardell do a burlesque act with a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer antler and ball gag setup. So yes, like the burlesque girlies are very creative, and girly is a gender neutral term in this context. Anybody in the burlesque world is a burlesque girly. But yes, I love to see just how creative and disgusting and imaginative my people can get.
Oh my God, I love it too. Okay, Diva, how about you? Tell us about your journey into burlesque. What drew you to it, and kind of what has that been like for you?
Kind of on the other extreme from the obsession since 6 years old. I didn't get into burlesque until I was 39. So anyone listening, like if you're like, oh, it's too late for me, no, it is not. Um, I was a theater kid, so yeah, stripping for theater kids. And I was actually classically trained. I did opera singing, I did ballet, I did Shakespeare. Which by the way, like everybody thinks like, oh yeah, those are like the classy things to do. I'm like, not if you go back to the times where they originated. Like they were scandalous in their own rights. Um, and the same way, if anybody ever says like, oh well, burlesque is classy stripping, like no, go back to the 1930s and ask them, if they think burlesque is classy. They did not. Like, but we don't care because we don't care what's classy. We embrace our trash. Um, anyway, so I started out my career in Manhattan trying to be a theater actress, and about my mid to late 20s, when my thyroid gave out, I went from having a ballet body to being fat very quickly, no understanding of what was happening to me, and very suddenly having to like change my whole perception of who I was and struggling with that, and with the way that I would be treated on the street and all those kind of things. So it was and one of the repercussions of that is particularly in that time, once you are a fat woman, like you can almost never get cast. If you get cast, you're the funny, ugly best friend. You're like the nurse in Romeo and Juliet, even though you're 30 years too young for the role. Like you're desexualized, you're marginalized. And so I was realizing that like my career had been taken from me, the thing I'd trained for my entire life. Wow. Which was incredibly hard to deal with. And I walked away from the theater world for about 10 years. And as I started to hear about the burlesque world, I was fascinated by it. And when I moved down to the DC area in 2001, not long after I moved down here, I started to kind of clue into the fact like, oh, there's an actual like local burlesque scene that I should check out. And a friend of mine turned out to be performing with the troupe that I later joined. And she was, shorter. She was kind of nerdy. She was a curvy girl. And she's like, oh, yeah, I do this act and I do that act. And I'm like, hang on. Like, you get up on stage and you take your clothes off and like people let you do that. She's like, girl, they throw money at me to do it. And I was like, you are lying. There's no way that that's a real thing. And so she took me to the troupe was performing at a club that's now closed called Chaos on F. It was one of the great gay clubs of DC back in the day. And so I'm watching the show, which is incredibly diverse in every possible way, gender expression and race and age and everything. And this performer comes out. Her name is Coco Monroe. She's a Black woman of size. And she starts this performance and she is a dancer, like trained dancer, which not every burlesque performer is. And she's doing that. She is owning the stage. She is bringing down the house. People are screaming at her like she's the second coming. And I'm just like, my jaw is in my lap, not just because she is such an amazing performer, but seeing this kind of body that I'd never seen celebrated in that way. I'm like, her body looks like my body in a lot of ways. And people are throwing money and they're like begging for her attention and there's thunderous applause. And I was just, my mind was blown. I was forever changed. It still took me probably another 7 years after that, before I finally landed in the troupe that I did. It's called the DC Girly Show. And we had a monthly show at Phase One, which, while it was open, RIP, was the oldest American lesbian bar. And I quickly figured out that if I put in, if I just like made the effort to like sign up every month, like even if I was on the waiting list for the performance, like I would end up getting an act in there. So I spent like an entire year with the troupe where I was coming up with act after act after act, just a different one every month for whatever the theme was. And sometimes I would have 2 weeks between concept and putting it on stage. And the thing that really attracted me to it was not just the body positivity. What attracted me to it was not just the body positivity and the queerness and the women centric nature of it, but the fact that I was able to control everything that I did. I choreographed it. I chose the costume. I came up with the concept. I decided when I wanted to perform. I submitted myself for bookings. Like, I chose the music. I edited the music. And I love having my hands in all these different areas. So like that really appealed to me. But it was a level of control that I never had in theater. In theater, you're like lucky. You're blessed if you're allowed to be on stage. And here I'm like, nope, I'm going to get up on stage and do it. And at the first troupe meeting that I went to, they were explaining to the newbies like how everything works. And they're like, well, we have a limited budget, so we can only pay you $25 an act, but then you keep all your tips. And those of us who are new were like, hey, hang on. We're getting paid to do this? Like, I don't just have to do this for exposure. I don't just have to be grateful that I was allowed to be on stage. And like, that was revolutionary just to me as a person, just being able to value my own work. So once the bug bit, that was it. I was in. And the funny part about hosting is that within, I think, the first 6 months of being part of my troupe, I co-hosted a show with a more experienced member just to see what it was like. And I got done with it and I was like, you know what? It was fun, but performing is really where it's at. I don't think I'm going to host that much. And now I make the majority of my living through hosting shows every month. So I'm like, well, you never know where that journey is going to lead you. I became a producer and MC in large part as an extension of creating my own work, creating the spaces that I wanted to inhabit, creating the spaces that I wanted other people to be able to inhabit, making like showing that, hey, the kind of shows that you're like, oh, that'll never sell, or, oh, people don't care about those kind of performers. I'm like, well, I'm going to put those people on my stage and you're going to scream for them and you're going to throw your dollars and they're going to feel hopefully as validated as I did the first time that I got up on stage and did it.
I love that. There's something very subversive, but also kind of dommy about being like, I'm going to do these things that you thought you didn't like, and you're not just going to like it, you're going to scream for it. Like, I don't know, you're like turning all the BDSM gears in my mind. I'm like, like that. I love that. Okay, so we have to wrap it up. We have talked about so much about burlesque, and I think what I've really loved about our conversation on burlesque is that it's really a conversation about so many other things, so many other important things about life. And I just think that's really beautiful and really important to underscore. So, okay, I want to wrap us up. Before we completely wrap up, I do want to highlight Diva Darling's story, which is up right now on Bothered Stories. It's called Role Play. I'm super excited about it. And I love it because it's got like everything in it as a story. Like it doesn't matter what type of stories you like to read, you're going to like this story because it has everything in it and somehow it's executed perfectly. It's got fantasy, like there's fantastical elements in it. It's got gaming. If you're a gamer, oh my God, you're going to love it. But if you're not, that's fine. It's got a lot for you. It's got a sapphic awakening. Part of it is set in a dungeon. Like there's just so much going on. The characters are vivid, unforgettable characters. It's set in different time periods. It's just awesome and hot and amazing. Diva, can you tell us as the writer, can you tell us a little bit about this story and what your inspiration was for it?
Absolutely. So I'm a queer gamer nerd myself, and I wanted to write something that was very queer, but also had elements of fantasy and to play with story structure a little bit. So the structure of the story goes between the in-game narrative of a D&D like campaign with the reality going on of the queer college students who are playing it. And so it kind of intercuts between those. And it kind of came out of something I saw a meme on the internet that just stuck with me so hard, and for a long time I knew I wanted to write a story like this, and this ended up being the perfect opportunity to write it. But it was a meme that says an adventuring party that forms in the women's bathroom of the tavern because someone is crying and random drunk girls at a bar will do anything for you. And I was like, I have to make a story out of that. So this ended up being a great opportunity to explore that aspect of the gaming world.
Yay. Thank you so much, Diva, for that story. It's great. And you can go to botheredstories.com, search for role play. I believe it's our featured story on the site. If not now, then it will be soon. And you can read it yourself. Okay, so we're going to wrap up this podcast. Tell me how listeners can find you and any upcoming updates that you might want us to know about. Feel free to drop those in as well. And Eden, I'll start with you.
Absolutely. You can follow me everywhere but home at Yes Mix Eden. That is YesMxEden. I am more active on Instagram than any other social platform, which doesn't say a lot because I'm not super active there. But if you want to keep up with where I am, what I do, and what I'm randomly thinking, Instagram is the place to find me. Yes, Mix Eden, not Mr., not Miss, because gender is a social construct. So it's mixed. You can also follow Charm City BVF on Instagram. That is Charm City Burlesque and Variety Festival. The festival is coming up later this year. It's the first weekend of October at Creative Alliance in Baltimore. And the committee, which I am a part of, is putting on 2 fundraiser shows in advance of the actual festival. So one of the things that the Charm City Festival does that every festival doesn't do is pay people. And so in order to raise funds to pay the performers who will ultimately be cast in the festival, the committee puts on 2 shows where we donate our labor, we donate our talents to raise money to ultimately fund the festival itself. And so folks should definitely follow Charm City BVF on Instagram, Charm City Burlesque and Variety Festival, to get tickets to our fundraiser shows and to follow the cast announcements for the actual festival, which should be coming out in the coming weeks.
Love it. Yeah. And if you're listening to this in the DC area, it sounds like you have a festival to go to this fall. Love it. Diva, how can people find you? And is there any updates, anything else that you want to share?
Sure. So on Instagram, I am Diva Darling, all one word. On Facebook, you can find me personally at Diva Nations. I have a page there. You can also find for my Smut Slam show, Smut Slam Mid-Atlantic is the page for that. I've also been in the process of starting a Substack called Hedonista, where I'll be writing about a lot of the kind of things that, I talk about here. Things that I have coming up every month, I do Smut Slam in Baltimore, currently the 3rd Friday, and Smut Slam DC. The dates are bouncing around. It's at Pub Key in DC, and that's a real life first person storytelling open mic that's all about sex, people talking about their sex lives. And which is surprisingly wholesome, by the way. You wouldn't think so, but it is a bonding, wholesome experience. I will actually be the Friday MC for the Charm City Burlesque Festival. So I love that Ian and I are going to get to be colleagues again, as we often are. I'm working on the committee that is producing the International Nerdlesque Festival, which is going to be next, I forget the exact dates. I think it's in September. Yes, September 11th through the 13th. And that'll be in the DC area. Is that everything I have going on? And then I also co-produce a monthly show called Nerd Night DC, which is basically funny but nerdy, like TED style talks that happen in a bar. And so it's very rowdy, and we make the smart kids into rock stars. So yeah, that's what I got going on.
Funny, nerdy TED style talks in a bar sounds awesome. Into it. Okay. Thank you, Diva. Thank you, Eden, for joining us today. I so appreciate your time. I so appreciate your insights. I loved hearing about your world everything burlesque. I think our listeners and readers are really going to love it as well. And I'm really grateful that you came on the show today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having
Thanks for
me.
having me.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Bothered Stories Smut Talks. Make sure to follow or subscribe so you can keep tuning in as we drop new episodes. And if you liked this, go to botheredstories.com and sign up. We've got beautifully written, hot as hell stories waiting just for you. Thanks for getting bothered with us.